Hey everybody, Breakthrough Health and Life Coach Glenn Hattem here. I'm here with Jonny Price. Say hi to everybody, Jonny.
Hello, everybody.
And that's how we roll here. That's how we do our mic checks. So the mics are working. Conversation's about to begin. Just two guys having a conversation about the critical pieces of life coming out of COVID times. I think is a good menu for today. And what can we do in this day and age, leveraging technology, leveraging experiences that we've had up until now to create abundance. I mean, yes, there's a whisper of recession on its way, and recession and depression and all these things. And us entrepreneurs have to be like, opportunity. There's an opportunity knocking right now. How can I seize the day? And so maybe Jonny, tell everybody a little bit about what you're up to in the world these days, in the business world, in the family life world. And then, I like to flip the script and go back in time and figure out, what were you doing, as a youngster, bastardizing the world before you got on this positive, optimistic path.
Yeah, that's a little scary, but a little trepidation as we head into the podcast here. But yeah, so I'll start with the family picture. So my wife and I live here in Nashville, Tennessee, with our three young kids. Felicity's 5, Carlisle's 3. That's a boy, Carlisle, and then Margot, our youngest, she's 1. So we moved to Nashville 2 years ago from San Francisco, where we were for the 10 years before that. And originally I'm from the UK, so you can probably hear that accent in there. So feel free to give me some stick.
It always makes us bad with that San Francisco NorCal,
Yeah, yeah. My accent has definitely been diluted. Whenever I go back home, everyone accuses me of being a Yank. But yeah, you can probably still detect the English. So that's what I do kind of on the family front. And then work-wise, I work for a company called WeFunder. We're a platform that helps startup founders raise capital from their customers and community, as well as rich people. So normally if you're raising, $1 million for your startup, you're going to accredited investors. That's basically millionaires. And you're kind of pitching them behind closed doors in private. And on WeFunder, we allow you to raise from anyone, your LinkedIn connections, friends and family, your customers and the kind of fans of your company, whether that be a tech startup or a brewery or distillery. We do Main Street Solar Stack. I've been here at 4.5 years. I run our business development team. Company was founded back in 2012. I joined the team in 2018, and my job is to basically connect with amazing founders throughout the country and persuade them that it will be a good idea for them to delight their customers by letting them invest in them.
Yeah, allowing the customers the opportunity to get involved and invest. Yeah, gosh, I think about myself for raising $1 million. I'm going to be on the rooftop doing that out loud. But
yeah,
usually all my side hustles are behind closed doors.
Yeah. Well, if you wanna tell the world, it's a brilliant marketing campaign, as well as we think it's gonna help you to raise more money more quickly if you can tell more people about it. So that's what we're up to.
Now, how does someone end up in this type of work? I mean, in this type of career path? This is something that at birth you were just like, this is what I'm meant to do.
Came out the womb, and it's just crowdfunding platform from day one. No, so like I say, I've been here for 4.5 years. Before this, I was actually working for a non-profit called Kiva.org that was also in the crowdfunding space.
What is the name of that again?
Kiva.org, Kiva.org. Okay. Non-profit based in San Francisco, and we crowdfunded microloans for entrepreneurs around the world. So we would make a $500 loan to a farmer in Kenya, and that would come from 20 people lending $25 each to her, and she would repay the $500, and then you would get your $25 back in your Kiva account, and then you can lend it to help someone else. So it's kind of like philanthropy, but it was a re-lending model. So rather than just donating 20
new projects.
Yeah, exactly. So my first Kiva loan, I think I made it in 2009. And instead of that being $25 donation that never comes back, that loan is probably cycled now, 10 times over and over again, helped 10 people around the world. So it's a cool model. So I joined the team in 2011 to lead their US team, basically launched, bringing that model to support US entrepreneurs, taco truck here in Nashville, or the small family farm in rural Arkansas. And so we made about 5,000 micro loans over 7 years that I ran that team. And then a new CEO came in and basically kicked me out. And so that is what brought me to WeFunder. And WeFunder seemed like a natural next step. It's still in the kind of crowdfunding access to capital space for entrepreneurs, but now on a much, much bigger scale. So the average Kiva loan was 5K, and the average WeFunder round is $400,000. So much, much kind of bigger sums of money. So that's kind of how I got to WeFunder. Started my career in management consulting out of college, basically because I didn't really know what I wanted to do out of college. And consulting, they came and gave presentations at my university, and it was like, they had really good canapes, right? They had free wine because you could drink in England under the age of 21. So they used the wine in the recruiting presentations. What's that?
Another reason to visit.
Exactly, another reason to visit. And so yeah, they had a very good sales pitch for why I should be a management consultant when I left college. And so didn't really know what I wanted to do. So did that for 6 years. That's what brought me to Kiva. And then Kiva brought me to WeFunder. So that's the career to date. So
then I guess if you get kicked out of this business, you'll be Elon Musk money next. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, VC is the next stepping stone. No, one day I want to get back to the nonprofit sector. That's my goal, is to be a CEO of a nonprofit as my next job. But no plans to make that transition just yet.
What might that look like? I'm just curious. You're having had that experience, and now you're in this different realm to get back to that, because that seems like a passion of yours.
Yeah, I'm really kind of pretty passionate about kind of financial inclusion and kind of trying to reverse a trend over the last few decades in the West, especially in America, I think, around worsening income and wealth inequality. So you have a situation over the last few decades where basically the top 1% have come to get more and more of the wealth. And so it's like, how can we kind of, help, people that are kind of working class, like trying to struggle to make it? Are there kind of policies or things we can do to kind of, help, level the playing field a little bit? So I'm kind of excited about that. WeFunder is that in a sense, in that, we want to get more capital flowing to underrepresented founders. For example, right now, 77% of venture capital just goes to 3 states: California, New York, and Massachusetts. And so we want to try to say, how do we get more capital flowing to Oklahoma or flowing to Tennessee, where I live? So we think this democratic model where, anyone can now be an investor in startups they love. Now, maybe that enables us to get more investors in Tennessee, which hopefully enables us to fund more founders in Tennessee. And on the investor side, why should it be that only millionaires get to invest in the next Uber, the next Airbnb? Let's let anyone, if they want to, invest in cool private companies. So WeFund is definitely, we're a B Corp and a public benefit corporation, and there's definitely a strong mission component to what we do. But I think, my long-term, the next thing, and this is, I don't know, 10 years down the line, but it's like more focus on kind of, income and wealth, kind of inequality, and kind of tackling that issue.
Yeah. And did you grow up where these were issues? Like in your upbringing, was that something that had, what inspires you about this concept work? Where did this come from?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think like growing up, my faith, Christian faith, was important to me. And so, that's, I feel like I always kind of there, Jesus talking about like, caring for the poor, and the first shall become last, and all that stuff. So I think that was pretty influential. I think my mom and dad definitely modeled it. We were not poor growing up, so this wasn't kind of born out of personal, economic challenge. But my mom and dad certainly were kind of modeling, generosity with their money and time, and kind of looking out for the least among us. And I went to Africa when I was 18 and taught in a school in Zambia for 8 months, and so I kind of feel like maybe part of this was coming from that experience and seeing a lot of poverty firsthand. So kind of probably, as with many kind of reasons why people have particular passion for something, it's probably a multitude of factors all kind of kaleidoscoping together.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine being in that environment that's textured and layered with so much life, and yet there's like, how's that we're here in the US, someone going through that kind of financial turbulence, and having
Right.
bare bone stuff, it would be much more impactful.
Yeah.
But
you never know, right? There's no, well, at least I don't know of any science around like, okay, this person has a passion for this one thing. Where does that come from, right? If you try to trace it back to, this one experience in my childhood, I don't really buy that, because I feel like that's kind of fitting the narrative to the facts, right? As opposed to you knowing that like that particular experience or set of experiences like cause you to be focused on that, have a passion for this thing. Like no one ever really knows why they're like, kind of excited about this thing, or where it comes from, or it's
we all like
complicated.
to tell that narrative, that story of here's that
Exactly
moment, when really it was
a
compilation of things you bumped into along the way, and just
it's a lot of serendipity. I'm not a very organized person or deliberate or proactive person, so for me it's a lot of like reacting to stuff as it's come along in my career, as opposed to this is kind of part of a grand design.
Yeah, so there can be all this deliberate intention, in your ability to kind of coerce life, but really as you've gotten older now and being a parent, you probably realizing it's like, I got to surrender to this what the day's bringing forth, and the elements, to work with.
So. Well, it's a pretty chaotic time as well. I'm coming at you from our house, which has like a fridge in the living room because we're knocking it down right now. So half the house is kind of literally today, this big excavator knocked it down, which is pretty exciting for my kids to see. But yeah, it's especially chaotic right now. No kitchen. We moved out, so I'm like squatting right now.
Yeah, so that's a challenging thing to undertake, because probably you wouldn't write the rule book on like how to go about this in this order, but somehow this is so common for most, when it's like, all right, time to gut it,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it's a juggling act between like, should we be doing this right now? Are we balancing everything appropriately?
I mean, this is kind of a meta point, but like, because it's like when you have 3 young kids, right? And then you work for a startup, and then you're moving house. It's like, you can go through life being like, oh, life is so hard right now. Just got to make it through this moment, and then things will get easier. But the problem with that is like, I don't know, in my life, it's never got easier, right? Sure, there are like peaks and troughs, right? Hills and valleys, but like, I think what the key, a key to, being happy, right? And fulfilled is like, whatever the stress of your situation, you kind of try to find contentment and peace and joy, even in a like very, very intense situation. And so if you can try to have that frame, I think that just like everything kind of, is looking more positive.
Yeah, life's very layered like that. I know even just for myself today, I've had COVID for the last, here comes the cough now, just for like, acknowledge
just
me.
for effect. I got COVID.
Confirmed.
Yeah.
But I just, I just like, I gotta get in the gym. I gotta get a little exercise in. And oh my God, it was a miserable workout. For someone who's just a hardcore fitness guy. And at the same time, I'm so super appreciative. I'm like, oh yeah, I was able to, do those pull-ups and do those push-ups and jump rope. I jump rope to
exactly.
Normally warm up with 1,000 jumps. I'm like, I'm just happy to do 500 today, 500 a day. And then I was able to do another 500, but not 1,000 in a row. And I know that, tomorrow maybe I'll do 600. Tomorrow might be feeling worse or whatever, but it's just you have to learn how to go with the, you can have your intentions for the day, but just appreciate the struggles or the challenges life's giving you. Like, it's not all about just appreciating the sunshine and roses. It's about appreciating the thorns in the day.
Well, Glenn, I don't think I've ever done 1,000 jump ropes in my cumulative in my life. So that's very impressive. But yeah, it's like 100 you did today, you can see that as like, oh, I'm not hitting the 1,000. Or you can see it as, well, yesterday I couldn't do any because I had COVID. And it's the same number of 500, but depending on your perspective, you're either frustrated or, happy that you're on the right track. And for me, that's like a huge part of life.
Sometimes it's happy about being on the turnaround. Sometimes it's happy about, hey, I don't have to work out this week. I'm sick. I got.
Do you think if you have that kind of positive glass half full perspective, that it prevents you from sometimes, striving relentlessly to improve and be better, because you're kind of, this is fine. I'm contented. How do you strike that balance?
I think it's a balance striking. I think you got to entertain both ends of the spectrum. I think you can't just get overdrawn into one piece of, going all out all the time in life and, ambitious and goals and drive. I think there's times, there needs to be a nice mixture of everything. It's just like there's a time to be intense in the gym. There's a time to sit on your mat and meditate and chill out and relax and get unhooked from your head and everything you were trying to wind yourself up with. It's like time to unwind. So I think it's at least in my experience, the balancing act is there are all these colors of the rainbow to celebrate, and the gray's in there too, so for me, just even like say, use an example of being sick with COVID, like 4 or 5 days, don't get me wrong, first 4 days I complained and moaned. I'm like, I can't even watch TV, I can't even read a book. I'm like, life really wants me to do nothing. I can't even get comfortable. I can't even sit in the shower. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, my brain's back.
Nice.
I think I could drive the store without hitting anybody. So just I think, life is, it's constantly moving pieces around and stuff. And as your kids and the fridge in the living room, it's like things are, moving to the next piece, and you got to just play around with what you got for the day. And I think if you can take that kind of attitude with things, you don't have to care how your hair looks for the day. You just be like, you can just relax and settle into new possibilities coming in outside of your traditional route of manipulating and controlling the world around you, so that it feels cozy. I know from backpacking through Southeast Asia, that puts you in an environment where every day, you're waking up to like, oh man, there's a rat running around the room in the middle of the night, or there's there's chaos down the hall, or there's the weather is changing and you don't have the coziness of your home environment, and you've got to work with, I've done, traveling a bunch as yourself, and when you're out of one of the best parts of traveling is what's going to go down today. Who's going to hustle us, into doing something, life's an adventure. And so I think for me, I get the itch of, I love being in my cozy home environment, but I get the itch to get out in the world. And then when I get out in the world, I get the itch to come home back to cozy. And so I think it's that dance, that blending of, our familiar structuring we do with our day and our clothes and our food and the people we interact with. And then there's a need to go out into the wild and get thrown around like a rag doll, with unexpected things, like you were just sharing earlier about a podcast or something, didn't go a certain way. And it's like, well, that I didn't plan for that. And that took me sideways. And what are the benefits of being stretched like that and that discomfort? Like I wouldn't ask for that, but life sure gave me that opportunity to maybe just let it go, or be more gentle with myself, or be in a different conversation than, the one you anticipated. So, So for yourself, with, being on this path of an entrepreneur, how would you say, when we talked earlier about there aren't these critical moments, so to speak, but it's just a bunch of mini decisions and opportunities, and they're not even really opportunities, just this is just what's going on, and let me look into this, and this sounds really okay, I can get excited about this thing right now at the time and step in, commit. But maybe tell a little bit about the jumbled kind of experience prior to some of these jobs, like even from going further back in time, like, you know, think of yourself as a youngster kind of getting out in the world. Like, I know for me, I always operated outside the box. So if someone said, here's the box, I'm like, F the box. I'm gonna do everything to get out of the box and do every, you know, I'm gonna tell you all the things that are wrong with the box, and I want to explore everything outside of that realm. And that seemed to be enlivening for me, but also get me in trouble, you know, at the time as a kid. And even through all the troubles and lessons to be learned, I'm still kind of wired a certain way. So most people that know me, they're like, you've been an entrepreneur since you were a little kid. Like, I remember when you used to have a table, instead of a lemonade stand, you had a table with all your Star Wars action figures that had their heads blown off, and you were selling them.
Nice.
You know, or I did magazine drives where it was like to get prizes. You know, most kids, you know, went out and knocked on the neighbor's door and said, hey, you know, buy this magazine subscription, and the money goes to the good cause of school, and I get a prize. And I was out like, you know, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, banging on the neighbor's doors, you know, climbing the highest hills and neighborhoods where no one would go because it's not flat. I'd be knocking on the end of the house at the end of the hill. That's the haunted house. I'd be knocking. I see your light is on. And I got these magazines you need to buy to support your school, to be a good person.
Yeah.
But maybe share about your kind of your way in the world as a youngster.
Yeah, I don't know. I might have a different experience to you. I think I don't.
Hope so.
I don't. Yeah, exactly. I can't really trace, you know, me as a kid to me now, or like only in kind of boring ways. Like I certainly can't kind of see, oh yeah, you know, the kind of action figures with the heads blown off table, Glenn as a kid. Like, you can clearly trace the line to kind of what you're doing today. You know, I was like playing a lot of sports, and so I was like always pretty competitive, I think, and kind of driven. So maybe there's that. But yeah, beyond that, yeah, I don't know if I can kind of look at like 11-year-old Jonny and say, like 39-year-old Jonny, you know, clearly, you know, can be visible in 11-year-old Jonny.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're competitive, you're an athlete. And then how about when you got into high school and then maybe academics and stuff? Was there something that you were leaning more towards an interest? And
not really. I studied history. I always kind of traced like what I do now, which is kind of a lot of like, you know, business development. I traced that to kind of studying history. Although I feel like I learned more in history in college. I studied history in college, but you know, you might say like, what's history got to do with kind of, you know, sales and business development, or even like kind of relationship building, like reading a bunch of history books. But for me, what you learn in history is basically empathy, because the biggest thing I learned kind of meta in history is that everyone has their angle, right? So everyone is coming at the writing of history, or every first-hand source. Like when you read like the kind of diary of George Washington or whatever, then he has an angle, right? And he has a view of the world, and he's writing from that view of the world. And so if you read it thinking this is like totally objective, then you totally miss out on like, you know, that angle, and so you miss the bias. And so what history teaches you is to try to understand where someone's coming from. If you really try to empathize with where that person is coming from, then it kind of helps you understand, like this is what's motivating them, this is kind of where they're coming from, which I think is very useful in a career where you're building relationships with people. And kind of my job is to try to like figure out, okay, what's your angle, what are you trying to get done, you know? And if I can kind of empathize with someone,
understand their motivations and be able to inspire.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of maybe traced that back to studying history. But yeah, I studied history in high school, and then again, and went on to study it in college. And in England, you just do one thing in college. So I just studied history for 3 years. So that's about the best I've got, which is certainly a pretty boring answer to your question.
Okay, so you were born then, and you're born now.
Exactly.
We knew it. There's the line now. So you study history, and obviously there's aspect of it must have been very fascinating for you, and you focused in there because that's just kind of the way the curriculum worked. And then getting out of college and stuff, and kind of getting into the workforce. What was kind of on your radar at the time, like with opportunities and things to explore, or kind of reverse directions?
Yeah, so like I said before, I didn't really know what I wanted to do coming out of college. I just kind of fell into consulting, and I think that was in some respects, that was a cool thing to do out of college. I got a lot of exposure, different industries, worked with some really brilliant people, got to be very good at, kind of certain things like building Excel models and doing business analytics and leading meetings and, putting together presentations for clients and that kind of thing. So there were a lot of skills involved in there. Kind of looking back now, working in startups, I think kind of would have been a better preparation for my current career at a startup to have done startups out of college. Yeah. I always think like your brain is the most kind of agile when you're in your early 20s, right? So the way I approach like my job now is probably heavily driven by the first thing I did in the working world at, coming out of college. And so I certainly, kind of in some respects wish I'd started my career in startups. But yeah, certainly consulting was really interesting. Met some brilliant people, taught me some good things. That still, I'm probably the best person at WeFunder at building an Excel model, right? Or, doing kind of rapid kind of SQL queries and business analytics. So that for me kind of, definitely kind of had roots in the first job I did out of college.
Yeah, I mean, I assume to be good at the work you do, you'd have to really get a good read and a good listen on what's trying to be conveyed by these models, and having to really kind of listen to what's being said, but also what's not being said, and thinking through something on a much deeper level versus just jumping into the project. So the consulting skill set, the inquisitor, that can get in there and be very inquisitive and curious about what are we doing this for? Like what, before we like even decide this is the right path to go, why are we doing this?
Yeah, exactly. Although in some respects, I feel like, consulting is kind of the antithesis of entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship's about execution and action and go. And consulting is kind of, let me research this and kind of spend 6 months doing, a kind of, research project and analyzing things. And it's like kind of, I think startups is more about action.
Yeah. I mean, but I appreciate, the consultants that I've worked with and the consulting work that I've done. I would say, I've done the flying by the seat of my pants. I've had that youthful energy and just, I'm unstoppable. I'm going to conquer the world. And, then I've licked my wounds after a few battles that didn't, went sideways. And then it's like, all right, well, you need to look at the analytics on this.
Yeah.
I need to study this a little more before I just, I'm gonna win this game on inches versus, Hail Marys. And so I think
I'm still in the Hail Mary camp.
I mean, I think there's a lot of aliveness in that, and I'm still spirited in that. I'm big vision. I gotta have a vision to do the day-to-day stuff. I like to go for things. I like to do things that people say are reckless. I'm like, all right, this is either going to go brilliant or it's going to be like, I should have known better. So, so definitely I have that entrepreneurial fire, that startup energy, and I love working with startup folks. And I try to surround myself with knowledgeable, wise men who, people that, and I have and female friends that, that give me an ability to drop in out of like whatever the head's concocting into, like, why are you doing this? What's this really about?
Right.
And so I play all the cards to try to come at something more rounded. So there's Yeah, there's a valuable piece, this startup, world and community, and then there's such value in the consultants and such value in the key metrics, that you need to keep your eyeballs on. So there's all these like
Right.
parts that, as an entrepreneur, you're not good at everything, and you need someone that can have an, I was just even on a conversation with one of my team members this morning just about, I'm like, if you don't like the idea, like push back on me with the idea here. Like, I don't want a yes person. I'm like, I trust you. Tell me what you think. He's like, well, this sounds, I think her argument was like, well, this sounds really great for the organization and what you're intending to do here. But I don't think I think that's going to create a hiccup with the customer experience. And I don't know if it's going to land as well. I know what your intention is, what you want to do. Will the technology support that? Where will the experience be that way for the customer? I don't know. I'm leaning a little more towards no. And I'm like, okay, it's no. We're going with no right now. Let's not do that. Take all the energy that's going to go to this, and we need to reallocate that towards some other things. And we're going to remove a step now in our manufacturing process. And so I think it's really critical to have people around you that will speak truth and share their unique experience. And lucky for me, she didn't have a huge historical background, because she would have been telling me the history of why this has not worked, on all angles. But she just laid it out to me real straightforward. So, but maybe share a little bit about how, for yourself as a parent. And there's the business aspect of handling shit and getting things done and making things happen and being creative and expressive and following this is my path I'm on right now and I'm all in. And then how you kind of switch hats at the home front when chaos begins and things have to be, how do you take that business hat, take it off, or put it in play effectively in the household with running youngsters and a wife and all those responsibilities?
Yeah, I don't think I do that well. I don't think I have kind of great best practices, or I'm not like a great role model. I hear people on podcasts, right, and they're talking about like, oh, I'm very, very present, and I don't think I'm that good at being disciplined there. And I'm like always getting distracted by Slack messages when I'm with my kids, and I kind of want to be like more present than I am, I would say. One thing I've like learned this year, which has been a good kind of win for me personally, this is working for me, because I find like at the end of every day, it used to be that I would like work for a couple of hours at the end of every day and have energy to do that, and now with 3 young kids I do not. So I guess at like 8:30, try to put them in bed. That my son's jumping out of bed for the next hour, so it ends up being like 9:30 when he's finally asleep, and then I'm just like, I am so exhausted, I can't do any stuff for WeFunder now. But what I've figured out this year is I can get up at like 5 a.m. and do a couple of hours work before they wake up. So I've been doing that this year, and that's part of then the reason I think why at 9:30 I'm exhausted. But that is now like basically 2 hours in every day that I got back and no one else is awake. So it's super productive. And so that's really helped, I think, me, basically do more on the work front without kind of encroaching on like, family time.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've had to flip your schedule a little bit, like most parents and most of us as we get older. It's like, it's getting late. It's 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. It's time to wind down.
Right.
I can watch some crap, or I can just go to bed. Right. And get up in the morning, be ultra productive before everybody else is going for the day. I can, your subconscious has worked through a lot of challenges and kind of is now supporting you that morning with the answers coming in a little more spitfire.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What other worst? We're not doing best practices. We're doing like worst practices. So, what else have you kind of discovered amidst just doing life that's working for you as a man, as just someone who's striving to, create a level of greatness in his life, and at the same time, keep the lights on. And
yeah, I think like, I mean, you said it before talking about metrics, like what the biggest kind of my one kind of one trick pony as a manager at work is like what gets measured gets managed, right? That's a Peter Drucker quote, I think. So, it's so true. And that actually applies to life as well. So, I started tracking my steps about a year ago on my iPhone. And immediately the next month I did twice as many steps. And I've done twice as many since then, literally twice as many average steps per day. Like from the month I started tracking it. And so that's one kind of thing, which is like, okay, if I want to get something done, can I start measuring and tracking that? If I start measuring it again, because I'm a competitive person, I want to beat my number, then it's like, okay, that's how I get that number moving in the right direction. Whether that's like, kind of revenue at work, or whether it's, the number of steps I'm taking every day on my iPhone.
Okay, so I don't know if Peter Drucker gets credit for this, but you're obviously like double productivity by obviously measuring and tracking things. But this competitive nature of yours has been around for a long time, and so that does carry into business or to way you relate to things. So it's just a way of, and I've had a number of clients throughout the years. They've got their counters, counting their steps. Or I had a client of mine when he used to run them on stadium stairs. He would actually count the stairs. So he'd be like, "Yeah, I did a total of 5,000 and so many steps." I'm like, "How did you?" He's like, "That's what kept me motivated,
right,
to doing is it counted every single step we did." So for you, like with work, you've got your metrics of what needs to be produced, and how does that personality of yours, I guess, when does it shut off? That competitive. So we talked about that kind of earlier, just like that balancing of like, I've got this competitive nature, and like when I exhibit it, I can get my steps done, or I can get productivity at work, but I can also turn it off, and I can also experience some other aspects of myself too. So I can lean on those things and as natural go-tos as tools. But what about turning it off at times?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think I'm kind of looking at metrics all the time. I think like I probably am looking at it too much. Sometimes I think I think people's greatest strengths is often also their greatest weakness, right? Or there's often two sides of the same coin. And so I do think like that's one of the things I do best in the workplace is have my team be focused on metrics and numbers, but then it can go too far where it's like we're focused on that to the detriment of whatever else. Maybe you lose the big picture because you're too focused on the narrow short-term metrics, or maybe you're kind of too focused on the numbers as the motivation, as opposed to the narrative motivation, right? Mission motivation. It's definitely something that I need to kind of be careful to balance sometimes. But yeah, certainly not the only kind of string to the bow, but it is probably from a management perspective, probably my number one kind of management like lesson to aspiring managers or managers. Like, okay, what's the thing you want to get done? Are you tracking it? Are you measuring it? Because if you start doing that, it increases the chances that you knock it out of the park.
Yeah, and I'm kind of the opposite. I'm big vision, and I surround myself with people that I'm like, give me the metrics on this. I want my eyeball in the spreadsheet. I love looking, so I get fascinated by the spreadsheet. I'm like, oh, now they just gave like a tool to the devil. Now I'm gonna like, the devil's in the detail, the numbers. I'm like, I can just multiply that, and then that grows, and like, oh, I've got formulas now you've armed me, I'm dangerous. But then
you don't have to be the one like doing the numbers, but it's like, I don't know what your goals are for this 1% podcast, right? But if part of the goal is to get more people to listen to the wisdom that is emanating from the lips of Jonny Price right now, then, you know, it's like, how
Emanating.
many people downloaded this episode? Let's track kind of weekly, monthly downloads. And then if you start tracking it, then it's like, oh, well, now I'm looking at these numbers, and you don't have to be the one collecting those numbers. To your point, it could be someone else in your team that's like better at that stuff, that's actually getting it. Then it's like, okay, well, and I was talking to this guy on my team the other day, and it's like a similar example. And then we're like, okay, we just start looking at the numbers, and it's like, oh wow, the numbers are flat. The numbers are not good. Oh, well, what do we have to do to get the numbers in the right direction? Oh, well, we better start telling more people about this. So, you know, how are we going to put together a playbook for distributing this? And but it's like only seeing the numbers as being flat that then triggers the conversation of like, okay, how are we gonna distribute this and get more eyeballs on it? But yeah, you don't need to be kind of doing the analysis or running the queries or the building the Excel models. But as the leader, as the manager, someone needs to put that together for you so you can look at it. And then once you're looking at this KPI that you want to be moving and it's not moving, then it all of a sudden starts triggering a bunch of different ideas about what can we do to move that KPI?
Yeah, that's definitely something that, you know, I was naive about for a number of years, and then put a lot of value stock in that, because I was just concerned about the narrative. You know, that's what lit me up. That's what the impact I was having in people's lives. And then it was like, all right, well, how do we scale and how do we grow, and where do we start pulling me back from certain aspects of the business, and where do we double down? And you can't do that unless you've got, you know, something to look at, to measure, to track. And
right.
Without those KPIs, you know, I think for a number of years, my KPIs were like, oh, the people just keep coming to the door and buying and signing up, and we keep getting incredible results, and like, let's just keep doing what we do well, you know, until we don't, you know. And then all of a sudden, you know, the seasons change, and now you've got to go, okay, what are our variables? What are the things we do best, or what are the things I do best? And from an evaluation standpoint, step back and yeah, I guess that's where the historian in me looks back and goes, all right, what we did last year, the year before, at this month, how can I get myself out of the way of the comfort of the familiarity to step into a new chapter, a new growth spurt, and pay attention to the right things.
Right.
So I know that's a without that kind of wisdom about your business, good luck getting investors to listen in.
Right. Yeah.
So you have to have the narrative piece, and you got to have the critical data, and then someone like yourself is going to put eyeballs on it and ask some critical questions. You know? Yeah. So, well, how would people get a hold of you if they wanted to look up on WeFunder, or, you know, and some of the products involved?
My email's Jonny@wefunder.com.
Okay.
And then Twitter, I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn. Jonny Price, WeFunder on LinkedIn. You'll find me easy enough. Yeah, I've got some folks in mind to refer to you. We'll talk about that. Yeah, if any founders are looking at raising capital, we do 50K to 5 million on WeFunder. So if you're looking at raising capital in that range, we'd love to help you out. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for sitting on this conversation today, and really appreciate you, and appreciate our audience listening in, and yeah, it's really fun, man. I like the kind of a little more expansive than the usual, you know, business kind of metrics and business conversation. I like the kind of going back through the life history and a little bit more you know, interesting creative questions for sure. I just like the, you know, who you are and why are you this way, like how the heck did you get here, like, and if we needed to, you know, figure out some gene splicing and figure out how to create another one, this is how we do it. So obviously you've also laid out some just obvious things for, you know, your folks that are, you know, have kids and are continuing to get up at 5 a.m. Get up at 5 a.m. That's the master playbook. 5 a.m. I did that this morning. You know, I was actually up at 5 a.m. getting my 2-3 hours of extra work in. And nice. Funny thing is, looking out my window, and a guy rode
was walking by with a towel over his head, and he was yelling something. I didn't understand what he was saying. And so kind of funny story, but he just stole a bike off of my neighbor's front patio. They didn't have locked up. I guess they didn't use the bike racks here. And I didn't see it happen, but I saw him going by and he was yelling. And I guess the guy in the gym across the way here was banging on the window going like, "I'm watching you stealing the bike." Then he came over to me afterwards after the guy had left and called the cops, and fun, you know, it was amazing. You don't hear about this. I go, well, by the time the cops get here, you know, the bike's gone, the guy's gone. But they caught him. They
did?
They caught the guy, yeah, just around the corner trying to get on the bike path probably. And
cool.
Yeah, I swooped in and got the guy, got the bike. They knocked on the neighbor's door and, you know, talked to them. And so amidst my like productivity, there was also some good morning drama that happens in the early hours.
Get the adrenaline flowing.
Yeah. And then to come to find out, it wasn't even a fancy bike. It was a cheap bike. It wasn't like one of these like Boulder, you know, Boulder, everyone's got, you know, a $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 bike. It's like a car nowadays.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just someone's like junkered bike. So they're like, it would have been all right. Yeah, he probably, so maybe the guy who needed the bike the most, you know, unfortunately it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But
that's funny. It was an interesting start to the day. Well, my day started with the excavator tearing my house down. So we both had an interesting start to the day.
Yeah. So there's productivity and there's stuff going on that everybody else is missing out on. So keep getting up.
Get up early, folks.
Get up early, folks. But I just want to say thank you again, Jonny. And we'll invite you back again for another conversation about life and the challenges, and maybe we'll dive deeper into history and learn a few things from you. So
love it, man. This has been really fun.
Yeah, I appreciate you, and thank you, everybody, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks, Clem. Bye.
Bye, everybody.